Good, Randy. How are you?
Excellent. Thanks so much. Really excited to have you here.
Excited to be here.
Awesome. Looks like we're both in our home offices. You down in Rye?
I am in Rye, New York.
Awesome. Beautiful. Well, really excited to have you on. You are episode number 82 of Tech Sales Insights. For those that don't know, Andy O'Brien is at OpenLegacy, the SVP and GM of North America, and definitely has lots of great words of wisdom and some good stories to share. His topic is building trusted relationships, which is something that's always critical and important. And we are sponsored by Alexander Group, who's a go-to-market and sales compensation sponsor of Sales Community. For those by chance that are not members, we actually have a special going on. You can get a year free. Maybe Tucker, you can post it if you go to salescommunity.com/June free. Definitely lots of great content if you want to learn more, sell more, network with others as well. I'll just put in my plug for Alexander Group. They provide revenue growth consulting services to the world's leading sales organizations. When clients need to grow revenue, they look to Alexander Group for data-driven insights, actionable recommendations, and results. And on a personal note, they've got a fantastic group of partners that I think have been there all kind of 20 plus years, but very, very competent in the sales consulting area, have helped out a lot of sales community advisory board members in terms of some key decisions and kind of what to do and how to do it, have access to some great models. So anyway, I can't say enough about them. And then we also host, I think most of them have been invite only webinars and events as well that go over really, really well. So all right. Well, unlike some of our guests, I've known Andy for a long time. I think it's been 41 years since we started at BC in the fall of 1981. You've been able to keep your hair a little bit better than I have. We've been in each other's weddings. Andy's actually been in both of mine, and we started the same day at EMC, something May 20 something or other in 1985. What was, by the way, so I was 33 was my employee number. I just remember that because of Larry Bird. Do you know what yours was?
I don't know. It had to be 32 or 34 or 30. Actually, I think it was 35. I may be making that up. So
I think it would have been alphabetical.
Maybe it was before you, because it goes before S.
So it must have been 32, 31.
31.
Anyway, good factoid. And then early on, Andy built the EMC presence in New York that really became a beachhead for growth. Wall Street and financial services, probably the first 10, 15 years were definitely vital to EMC's success. And then Andy went over to grow the Americas region for Green Plum and Pivotal, also created and ran the Technology Select Group at Dell for the Americas. And interestingly enough, he actually started off advising OpenLegacy and liked it so much, decided to join full time. I can definitely vouch for firsthand that Andy's great for growing sales teams. Definitely lots of respected relationships. You'll hear more about relationships today, but definitely with customers, partners, even competitors, which is unique. And I'd say most importantly, he's a great, great husband and father. So feel free to disagree with anything I said, Andy, but awesome to have you, and thanks.
Great. I'll agree with it all. Behind closed doors, I'll agree with it all.
There you go. All right. So maybe tell us a bit about your professional background.
So, I mean, you hit on it. Started in the early days with you and a few others at EMC, and then opened up the office in New York. And when EMC the company started hitting their really big growth trajectory in the mid to late 90s with the high-end storage product. Helped to build that selling organization, that customer base inside of New York, and kind of help with others, build their global account program, and then went on to when EMC made an acquisition in 2010 of Green Plum, which was a small West Coast data analytics software company. I went in to build and run that selling force for the Americas. And that was a national job, and then that morphed into Pivotal, where the companies took assets from VMware and EMC and acquired some assets and built Pivotal software. And that went on, and Pivotal eventually went public, and then got acquired by VMware inside the EMC family. And then, as you know, when Dell made the acquisitions of everything, went in to help build a kind of a high-end touch, selling, capability for large clients, that we could represent all the assets that Dell Technologies had acquired. And then, as you said, left and done some consulting work with some small companies, one of them being OpenLegacy.
Awesome. And we have Peter Bell chiming in here. I cannot thank Andy enough for giving me my first shot and introducing me to EMC in 1986. So much appreciated. So Peter Bell, super successful entrepreneur, VC, advisory board member. And yeah, Peter, but I think the story was he was working to be a CPA, PwC, and the final nail in the coffin was that he had to count the pages in a phone book or something like that, using whatever the calculator machine was at the time. So pretty funny. And then Pat Odell says, great to see you, Andy. One of EMC's first superstars that I learned a lot from. So very cool.
Thank you.
Now, Pat was, he was in, at the time, New York and New Jersey were different districts, right?
Yes.
And Pat was New Jersey, right?
Pat and Greg Guimond were in Jersey, and I was in New York. So
how did Greg get Pat instead of you?
I don't know. I think Pat must have lived over in Jersey. Well, that must have been it. But Pat was great.
Awesome.
There
you go. So for those watching, certainly feel free to chime in with any comments like Peter and Pat. Also, more importantly, feel free to ask any questions. Andy is a fantastic resource. So Andy, maybe tell us a little bit about OpenLegacy.
Sure. OpenLegacy, it's an application modernization platform that basically generates digital services from legacy assets. So if you're a large bank, insurance company, manufacturer, and you have decades of application and data that exist on, Oracle mainframe, SAP applications, and you're trying to create a digital service for it, we're making that connection from what an old legacy app into a digital app. So our target market are, as I mentioned, large companies that have been around for a while, that have accumulated a lot of that value and information. So when I'm here in the Americas. And
gotcha. So it's is your kind of target market then must be pretty small. Then it's only kind of a few hundred accounts or 1,000 accounts?
No, it'd really be probably thousands of accounts. And the prerequisite is that you have to have legacy assets. Maybe I would say maybe 1,000 or less, but you have to have some environment that has legacy assets that you've built over time. And you also have to have the initiative that you're trying to create digital assets out of what's been accumulated and used. So the market's a little bit broader than a couple of hundred, but we're a small organization, we're focused mainly on top banks, top insurance companies, top manufacturers, top healthcare providers.
And then what kind of level do you sell to in terms of kind of who are the decision makers, kind of CIOs or?
Yeah, I mean, our selling will obviously touch a CIO, just given the nature of the technology that we're touching. I would like to say everybody wants to sell to the business unit. Not many business executives are overly interested in taking a technology conversation. So a lot of what we do ends up being with the application development side. So we look for the IT community that's actually interfacing with the business and building applications on behalf of the business. And those are really where we get into the most interesting and the fastest discussions.
Wow, that's great. Any good customer story that you can tell?
And we've done a lot of work with yes. So with Citibank, we've done a lot of development work there and helping them, retool some of their applications from a mobile perspective. We've done a lot of work with some of the insurance companies, MetLife and Liberty Mutual. All around compliance, all around extending legacy applications. It's all really based upon what customer interactions that clients are trying to have with what companies are trying to have with their clients, I should say.
Oh, that's
So
great. And then is it a kind of like a one-time license or ARR SaaS, or what type of model?
it's a SaaS based offering. We sell as a subscription, and we'll do it on a on-prem basis. We'll do it in any public cloud, but it is an ARR subscription based model.
Oh, that's great. And any competitors?
Yeah, there's a lot of do it yourself where there's a lot of middleware that clients will use. So the concept of what we're doing is not new. It's not revolutionary. It's something that needs to happen. So clients will put together with some middleware that might be from companies like MuleSoft and services to kind of create that bridge from old to new. Probably a more direct competitor would be IBM with like ZOS Connect, that can go and provide some level of functionality from mainframe into a digital format, but that's all specific to the IBM technology.
But you've got some pretty good household names as customers. A lot of those are IBM's largest customers. So OpenLegacy must be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's when people listen to our story and understand our technology, we get stopped a lot early in our conversations with clients saying, "Look, I get it. You're making this very easy connection from old to new." So what we're doing is a very valuable component in people's modernization efforts.
Oh, that's great. And then kind of coming in as a relatively new leader, you were kind of a consultant. I know sometimes I've done some exposure to companies and then took a full-time job. Were there maybe some things that people might have said or done to you that they were kind of regretting once you became their boss?
No, no, I don't think so. I didn't really have that experience, and I'll thank Peter. Back to him when I was looking at these companies and I was considering doing something full time. Peter was like, "Hey, listen," because I liked OpenLegacy when I first met him, and I had the advantage of working as a consultant for them for about probably 6 or 8 months. So I got to really know the organization well. I got to know the people well. My interaction was always with the lens that, hey, I may end up taking a permanent position here, so make sure that my interactions with them are very, positive and inclusive. So I didn't have much of that dynamic.
Gotcha. Anyway, I got some different stories I could tell, but anyway, and then if we were to talk to the CEO and say, okay, what is it that Andy's done to provide the biggest impact? Any kind of one or two things in particular?
I would say like understanding how large, complex organizations build solutions and how they select partners and acquire technology. I think just having that institutional knowledge and having done that for a long time, I've done it more in the financial services world than anywhere else. But I have done it in auto and some of the other, industries, kind of knowing, personally who to go to within some accounts to go and talk to start telling the story and investigate and discover what good could possibly be happening. And also knowing that as you're going into these campaigns, like who are the other constituents that you need to get involved in these selling motions where, while what we're doing is a pretty simple element of it, it's touching the really innards and the lifeblood of what these companies are doing. So just being sensitive to that.
Yeah. So you can have a company that has great product market fit, but if
Right.
you don't know how to represent it and sell it to whoever it is, doesn't matter. So certainly probably a much needed skill, and you've been able to add a lot of value, which is great.
I just add also commercially, like having an understanding about how commercially this should be offered to a client, like having some consistency about what we're providing, what the value request is for the solution, so that we have a fair model, we have a consistent model, and a repeatable model. So we're not doing like a one-off in every interaction.
Oh, that's great. So what about if you are talking to a recruit? Kind of what would be some nuggets about the culture or anything else in terms of why they should work at OpenLegacy?
I would say that the people, and with the over the last number of years, there's been a ton of investment in new technology companies, and there's a lot of new founders that are out there. There's a lot of new people that are building companies that are having levels of responsibilities and influence that they haven't had. And I think you're going to have a mixed experience across the board in terms of your personal interaction with people. So, I would say, a selling point for OpenLegacy would be the quality of the people, not obviously an intellect, but that's kind of, you kind of need that if you're in a stage where you're successfully building a business. But I would just say, how you think about the world meaning how you want to have your interactions with your customers, how you want to have your interaction with employees, I think is super, super critical. So having that, that experience, inside of OpenLegacy in particular was really, really important for me. And as I'm talking to people looking to join, I'd be like, look who the people that you're going to be interacting with every day. You're spending an awful lot of time in a small company, so there's really nowhere to hide, right? It's like being a part of a small family. You've got to find a way to get along, or if not, then you should, both sides should probably take a pause about what they want to do. So, I would say that we have a very involved advisory board. So some, former execs from Pivotal, Pivotal Software, where I came from IBM. So I think there's a lot of executive eyes and helpful, eyes and ears and arms that are here to help.
Oh, that's great. And they get to work with you and learn from you.
Sure. That's all free.
Big benefit. There you go. So our the title that you picked was Building Trusted Relationships. Tell us more.
So, I always think back in the parts of my career, and I would say the most compelling time in my career was building Pivotal Software. And I say that not because of the success that we had in the market, but the interaction I was able to have with Paul Maritz, who was our CEO and chairman. And for those of you, if you don't know who Paul Maritz is and you're on the call, like Google Paul Maritz and understand his background and what he did to build Microsoft and what he did to run VMware. So you may not be a household name, but you should, as a homework assignment, go and understand what he's done. And we built Pivotal from scratch. So when Paul started the company, he said, listen, we got an ability to start to write our own story here, or start right at the beginnings of our own story. And he's like, hey, we should do it in a couple of ways. Number one, we should do it with passion. Two, we should do it with respect. Three, we should do it by learning to do things differently, being intellectually curious. And four, do it in a way where we're giving more than you get. And when we have success, make sure that we do it in the right way, so that when that success is achieved, that the people around kind of take a look at you and say, wow, you really did it the right way, right? So no one's going to begrudge you for what you did. You didn't run over people. You really did it the right way. So that's a message that is really, that resonated with me, and something that I really tried to internalize. So when I talk about building trusted relationships, and I've done a very poor job at that, and I've done a very good job at that. It's really about doing
You've done a poor job of it. Is there anything you could share with
us? I would say early in my EMC career, when we're building the business in New York, we were having a tremendous success, and we were
age wise, this is kind of mid-20s.
Probably a little bit older, probably in my early 30s. But anyway, okay. So we're having a ton of success, and my team, led by me, we're running over everybody inside of our own company to get things done, and not having a whole lot of empathy or communication or respect for colleagues. And I remember my boss at the time did a 360 review of all the leaders, and it was a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the best, where your other functional groups came in and ranked you. And my opinion of myself and my ego were way at the top. And when I got these results back, my scores were literally on average like 2, maybe. In the company. Oh,
you good? You
Randy, you still there?
Now you're back. Yep. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Randy, you there?
Yes. Andy? Tucker, can you hear? Is it my connection or his? Oh. All right. Tucker says.
Tucker, you're saying you can hear me for some reason.
Tucker says I can hear you. All right. Now he's out.
Sorry.
No problem at all. All right. That's what happens. All right. So Andy, can you speak?
Randy, can you hear me?
Yep, we're good. Yes, we can hear you.
I can't hear you for some reason. So I guess I'll
Tucker,
continue talking, and hopefully the audio
great.
on my end comes back.
All right.
But the lesson that I learned was I had an opinion of myself that wasn't shared by the extended team, and that made me feel poorly. It also made me understand that kind of reflect and understand the value that these team members were really providing to the success that we were having, in the market. So it was a wake up call for me where, I had the ability to kind of adjust my approach, and coming out of that, I spent a lot of time understanding, what were people's motivations, what were people's emotional currencies, and things of that nature. So that was kind of a wake up call for me.
Gotcha. All right, I'm just going to digress. Can you hear me,
Randy?
Andy?
I'm not hearing you.
All right, Tucker, can you hear me? Let's see here. Sorry about this. All right, Tucker says he can hear me. Andy says he cannot. Let's see here. So for some reason, Andy cannot hear me.
You're gonna have to freelance a little bit, Randy.
Yeah. Okay. Got you. Let's see here.
Randy, maybe I'll go out of this and come back in.
Yeah, Tucker, what do you think? Sorry, everybody. Let's see here. All right. Yeah, why don't you go ahead and try it? So everybody, we're going to do a pause. Hey. Yeah. So maybe try and go out and back in. And Eric, yeah, people said they can hear both of us. So maybe it's just you not being able to hear.
Right.
So he's going out, come back in. Andy, can you hear me? Andy, well, take some liberties here. So Jack Salerno says, I'll take some credit for your early sales success from my introductions to all my IBM accounts, where you swept the floor with EMC after I went back to business school. Yeah, so some.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Sorry about that.
All right. So just Jack Salerno. So he was a great rep in New York City. So hopefully statute of limitations passed. But if I remember, I think we went out to dinner and were able to maybe learn of some of the accounts that he had. And he disappeared for years and came back. And lo and behold, they were all EMC. So I'm not asking for you to confirm or deny. So we'll just keep rolling, Andy. All right.
Right. So.
And then Jamie Mariner says, sounds like trying to hear someone at a mod party. Interesting. And then let's wait till we're done with this. And then we'll get to Rachel's Tucker. So anyway, so very authentic of you. I mean, not as an authentic leader, and any great leaders, I think, are always very open to sharing not just the good, but in your case, I think certainly something that you learned from, and it's probably had a profound impact on you rest of your career, and it's probably one of the things that have made you so great, and certainly I'm sure very aware of that in any situation going forward, right?
Right, for sure.
Awesome. All right, any other things that come to mind for you around building trusted relationships?
I would just say on the other side of it, and I learned this just from observing people like Joe Tucci and how he interacted with clients, and how the interaction didn't always need to be, chasing a transaction. It had to be with what could I do to be helpful to a client in a situation. And in 2008, when the credit crisis was hitting, and the banks in particular, the banks in New York were going through a really, really rough time. Because what I had seen Joe do, I picked up the phone and I started calling all the customers that we had, and not asking for a deal, not asking for like next steps or status, but just saying, hey, listen, I'm calling you as a friend. We have resources that are there. They're going to stay there through this time. So don't worry about trying to get SOWs extended. If you need equipment, that needs to be there on the floor. So I'm here to offer you whatever you need. And I remember hearing from multiple people saying that that's like the only call I've gotten in the last 2 weeks, Andy. That's been from people offering to help me. Most of the calls have been from customers asking where their money is, or when were the invoices going to get paid. So I think that conversely, I think when you look at empathize and kind of look at what the how the customer is feeling and how they're and what they need. I think that was an example of the more positive side.
Fantastic, and probably extremely relevant to the times now, right? So from a sales
100%.
situation, you can see a lot of salespeople are probably saying, well, XYZ account doesn't have money, or they're downsizing or cutting, they don't have any money to spend, I'm going to stay away. But what a fantastic opportunity as you exhibited, right, to kind of just show up, help in any way you can, or offer, or be a sounding board. And I got one of my several mentors is Jack Connors, and said everybody's always there for people in the good times, but it's when they're on their bad times that that's when it's a much smaller list. And not only is it sincere and genuine, but they're going to remember that the rest of their lives. So I think that the same thing goes through not only in business sales situations, but certainly in personal situations as well.
For sure.
So great. So before we move on, any other things around trusted relationships?
No, I would just say it needs to be something that's consistently done. It's not just about taking, a potential client or a client, out to a social event. I think it's going into every interaction and leaving there and understanding, what did you contribute to that interaction, and, what was learned during that interaction, and how did you make people in that interaction feel, whether that's an external sales call, whether it's an internal planning meeting, forecast meeting, but just being very self-aware of what you provided, how it was received, and putting yourself in the into the behind the scenes and how other people are viewing the value that was brought to that interaction. But it's something that needs to be done in every interaction you need to try to do in every interaction that you have, and that builds trust over time, and that is a good place to be, and it creates long-term relationships, and it creates all the benefits of that come every 90 days in selling cycles, and every measurement that's out there. So
that's great. Hey, were you around for the Walter Brown days at EMC, or you may have already left?
No, I don't remember Walter Brown.
Anyway, so he's a lot of great things, but he always said, kind of know me, like me, trust me. So
Right.
A lot of times people think, oh, it's the company that's going to make or break me, but if they do know you, they like you, and they trust you, and it's that trust over time that helps people, I'll say, sell more and partner better. So
Right.
All right, so Tucker, let's get to Rachel's question. Thanks, Rachel. So for full disclosure, she's one of the awesome executives at Alexander Group. What type of talent are you looking for that can focus on IT and potentially the functional buyers? What companies do you typically hire from?
So in terms of the space that we're in, because it's in the application modernization space, I think you need somebody that's got a level of technical awareness, not somebody that needs to get into the bits and bytes, but somebody that really understands how technology works, and from a little bit deeper than just a business level. And kind of with that, I would say like an intellectual curiosity. So, for who's going to come in, and especially in a small company that has limited ability to onboard people, and we want to do it, but our resources, because we're out chasing deals. But who is somebody that's going to go in and be a self-learner and really understand what the market is and what the technology does. So I think that is an attribute that is really, really important for us. You talk about general sales capabilities and grit and determination and like go-gettedness. That's all there as well. And I think a collaborative approach is important too, along the lines of some of the things that I said. Like you can't go in and do this on your own. So how are you going to enable your own internal ecosystem to be successful? So those are, I think, are really important attributes.
Great. And Eric chimes in. He said, I work with EMC team in oil and gas during the dual build, dual sell strategy. Great team at EMC. So I don't know who Eric was with at the time, but anyway, interesting. So moving on. What's that?
I think HP.
Okay. So it was when we had the HP EMC deal.
I think so. I don't want to speak for Eric.
Kind of an oxymoron, I guess, to a certain degree. But anyway, so Andy.
Dell. Well, he was at Dell.
There you go. Okay, there you go. A little bit better there. So anyway, so Andy was a contributor, as several advisory board members were, to my book, Tucker, if you want to post it, it's salescommunity.com/book. And Andy has a couple of great write-ups. Maybe you can tell us about them. One of them is playing for the consolation prize, a great concept.
Right.
Can you tell us more about it?
Sure. I mean, nobody wants the consolation prize, right? We want the big prize when you're in sales, but reality is you're not always going to win the big prize. And this kind of goes back to, building a trusted relationship and how you behave and how you have that interaction. So it's like, how do you not turn over tables and chairs and scream at a client or people internally when you lose a deal? But it's like, how do you regroup, and how do you take a look, how do you not give up in a way that, is there another element, is another area that you can start another selling campaign in? So like in EMC parlance, it was always like, hey, if you lost a production, workload, could you go in and get a development workload? But how did you do it? And how did you go through that interaction in a way that the customer had a good feeling about it and was willing to let you engage in another opportunity? And also with your teammates, how do you get your teammates to be inspired to come and follow you for that next opportunity? So it's really along the lines of that, kind of keeping your eye out for the next opportunity.
So you basically just get a foot in the door, maybe smaller than you want, and then you can kind of supersize it from there.
Right. But the key is that interaction that you're going to have that's going to get you that foot in the door. Yep. Right. So it's how you're perceived, or when what's the taste people have in their mouths when you go through a process like that and you don't get the answer that you want. How do you turn that into something that can be positive for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And then your other one was reverse timeline, which is another classic.
Yeah, so I told you I played golf with a friend of ours from college who's like a +1 handicap, and played golf and we're talking about reading putts, and he's like, Andy, when you read a putt, he goes, you have to look at like where the ball's going to enter the hole. He goes, so like don't look like, so take a look at the slope, and to figure if it's a side hill lie, the ball's going to come in from the side of the cup. So in my mind, that was so when you do it like a reverse timeline and on a deal, like where do you find what side of the cup is that deal going to come in on, and then kind of tracing all the way back to like where you're putting from, where the deal started, or where you happen to be at that point in time, and kind of chart out what things need to happen in order for that deal to come in. So in a sales perspective, at the end of the day, the ball's in the cup when you get handed an order. But what needs to, but before that order, you have to have a contract. Before the contract, you have to have a budget approval. So it's more just being very prescriptive about, what's needed in getting, transactions done.
Yeah. I mean, and, so many times I think people are, loosey-goosey. People think, oh, sales is just a, kind of, play it by ear thing. But, as we know, it's really a science. And the best sales professionals are the ones that really can cover, every single base around kind of all the different factors that you need to consider.
Right. And what I learned, clients love being part of that process generally. So when you sit with the client and be like, hey, I'm trying to figure this out, can you help me? I think it's don't try to do it without, try to involve the client in that. And my experience has been almost universal that they want to be part of that process. Yeah, and if they don't, then that's telling you that's giving you a different, reaction, different answer, probably not the one that you want.
Yeah, I was talking to Bill Hogan this week, and we're kind of joking about the importance of recap notes. I've got a LinkedIn. I've got kind of backlog of stories, so I've been doing one. I might do a 2 week, but I might be old school. So one of them we're talking about was just important of prompt recap letters. And then just making sure you're going through, if there's any concerns, what the concerns are, what the next steps are, what's involved in getting the kind of funding done. Does it have to go to a bid? Is there a board? Is there some higher up person? Do they have the money available? And kind of just going through in that recap note, not just what happened in the meeting, kind of everything that needs to happen, including, and then, therefore we anticipate we're getting our order, whatever, June 25th, which is then 5 days before the end of the quarter, and we need it before the end of the quarter in order to honor the pricing that we gave you, but just kind of all those details, today you just see so many people not covering it, or they say, oh yeah, you said we're going to get it. I'm like, well, how do you know? Unless you can kind of be very prescriptive and recap that back and then CC everybody else, because everybody else always has different agendas.
It was interesting. I had an experience in the last week where we had a meeting with a potential large banking client, and we had a large integrator. Accenture was part of this meeting, and it was myself, and it was one of our lead technical developers, and it was a 45-minute meeting. I took 2.5 pages of notes, And when I debriefed with my colleague, it was amazing. Like it wasn't drastically different, but there were different elements of things that I thought I heard and that he thought that he heard that were like not aligned. Right. So that was a really good opportunity to go back and clarify with the client, like big things, like,
Yeah.
well, it was like being diligent, having those notes and recapping and understanding, because, in a 45-minute conversation that's going fast and your mind's working, and you just got to make sure you're capturing everything and playing it back.
Yeah, totally. So value selling is a concept that we've been working with a lot over the years. So I assume you would agree that that's an important concept, right?
Right.
And so maybe relative to OpenLegacy, kind of how would you equate that? Say if you're in an elevator with a CFO, what would you say to either if they're already a customer or a deal that you're trying to get approved?
Right. So I mean, our value proposition at OpenLegacy, and it's kind of like what it was at Pivotal. Like it's not a good strategy for us to go in at a senior level and say, hey, I can save you 20% in cost, or I can give you 20% improvement in speed, because as a small company entering into a market that's filled with a lot of large partners that are there, that's kind of like a non-winning strategy, because somebody can always tweak that, and what you view as your value may not be what ultimately it is. So at a high level from an OpenLegacy standpoint is, hey, how can we change the experience for your clients? How can we create a mobile application in the case of Citibank that millennials that are now going to have a ton of different options to bank? How are we going to help you create an output or a product that's going to be something that's very unique, that's going to create a momentum in the market towards a part of the market that you kind of want to acquire? So we're going to take everything that's old about a bank and we're going to make it into everything new. We're going to take an old bank and make it look like a fintech, and those general attributes of just changing the client experience, I think serves us well.
Oh, that's great. What about some examples of sales leaders that you respect and why?
Yeah. I've been like incredibly fortunate with the people that I've worked with. You and I before talked about like Dick Egan, and if you had the opportunity to know Dick and work with Dick, it was the pleasure of a lifetime. And I think from someone like that with a passion, how to build a business, I think like Joe Tucci, when he, came in and talked about more like how to look at things at the customer's eyes, I think that was really, really valuable. Like more like the empathy and some of the trusted relationship stuff that I talked about, with like Billy Scannell, at EMC. I just think, there's passion, but you really can't teach passion. But it was more about building a plan and how to approach a market and all those small things that you needed to do to build a business and repeat it was really important. How to build with Billy, how do you build that ecosystem around you? A lot of the things that I talked about earlier that I was failing at, how do you go and surround yourself with people that are gonna help you really go and be successful. Carl Eschenbach, from VMware, I just think from the amount of success that he had, the humility that he would, that you would get from him in your interaction, and how customers would feel. So those I'm sure I left, dozens out, but I don't know if Steve Fitz was a great guy, Eric Mann. So there's plenty of leaders I had the opportunity to really interact with, but those are kind of the attributes at a high level.
Yeah. I mean, Billy in particular, he's kind of morphed through so many different cultures and companies and environments. I've told him he should write a book on how to, survive and thrive. And it's
Right.
crazy.
Right.
So,
Right. But again, with him, it's always been, it's been a process. It's been, a repeatable process. It's been having, getting the heft of an organization behind the selling effort.
right.
And that kind of makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. What about certainly things have changed in the sales world? What about your view on the importance of sales ops and rev ops?
As I took on my roles at Greenplum and Pivotal, where I was in that national role, I really, no one had to convince me that sales ops was really, really important. When I came into those roles, it was hugely important. I couldn't have run those businesses without really strong involvement from sales ops and from business ops. I mean, these were partners that could help with crunch the data and help with, not predictive models, but let's talk about what we think we can get done in a 90-day or a 6-month cycle. And that's what data do we have out there that we can learn from? How can I represent on behalf of, the America's business to the executive staff, what we're predicting from a revenue standpoint and have some accuracy to it. So that element is absolutely essential. And also think from a about talent evaluation standpoint, I would rely on that function like very consistently. Like, okay, tell me who are the leaders that are out there that are doing things correctly. Tell me like your interaction with these people all the time as well. Like, give me like who's being really productive and who's doing the right thing and who's not, right? And so I think having another set of eyes or ears on the field and trying to figure out, who the people that were really doing the right thing in a big way, like how did they help me figure out who was standing out there and who was maybe not doing as much as I thought that they were.
Yeah, that's great. And it's a small segue, but Alexander Group, I know you've not actually used them directly, but I think you said you've attended some of the webinar events that we've done.
Yeah. They've been great. I mean, I think they provide a really good forum for like discussion of I've been on with them mostly around compensation discussions and how you go when the market's thriving and you're trying to hire the right people. And I know Rachel asked questions about that before, but how do you determine who to bring on? How do you, structure a compensation plan that's responsible, that's fair, that's responsible, that provides, some incentive to people. So they have a really good overview, a very calm way of delivering data in a very rational way of delivering data. So it's been when I've had that interaction, it's been very positive.
Great, good shout outs there. So for those on, we have Andy O'Brien from OpenLegacy. Lots of great nuggets that we're getting here. Feel free to chime in on the comments with any questions. You can see us or hear us. We cannot see you, but definitely can see anything that you post. So any questions or comments, feel free. So Andy, what about any mentors that you've had and advice that you've received?
I kind of mentioned that Paul Moritz, in my mind, just like that interaction I had with him, it was at the point in time where I just needed a lot of that in terms of a cultural standpoint. I also had a great mentor in Tom Heiser, who was my first boss at EMC. And I don't know if Tom's been spoken to this group before, but I remember as I was trying to, this is coming out of that discussion that I talked about earlier, where I had no self-awareness of how I was behaving. And I was really trying to work on that. And, and use it, like being impatient was a really big, character default for me or defect for me. And I remember, talking to Tom about it and, Tom saying, Andy, and Tom was, if those of you don't know Tom is crazy passionate and probably displays, some impatience at times. But I remember him saying, listen, why, have you ever seen, like, who do you look up to? I'm like, Joe Tucci. He's like, have you ever seen Joe Tucci be impatient or like lose his mind or get angry? And I'm like, I haven't. I had the fortunate experience of being with Joe a lot. And Tom's like, I'm with Joe like every week for hours a week. And he's like, I've never ever seen that guy like loses patience. So, Tom was a person that I think we shared a passion and probably shared a bit of impatience in our personalities. And I think having somebody that I knew kind of shared that and kind of point things to me that were pretty easy for me to understand and point to examples that were pretty easy to internalize. I think that was, and I'm going to shout out to Peter if he's on. I think just like kind of slowing down and being patient is another way. From my standpoint, you always as a type A salesperson, you want to like go, but be like, hey, take a pause, understand what's going on around you. Whether you're in a selling cycle or whether you're in a larger decision, if you're an employee decision or a building decision, like take a pause, really understand, be thoughtful about what your next steps are going to be. And again, how are you being, what value are you bringing to that interaction? How are people feeling about that interaction? So I think that like slowing down pieces is important too.
Yeah, definitely. Take your breath. So Rachel from Alexander Group says that sounds like it's her colleague that was with Pivotal when you were there years ago. Thanks for the comments. And then Eric asks, what does your 1, 3, and 5-year revenue ramp look like? So if you don't have to say exact numbers, if you don't, maybe percentages. What parts of the overall OpenLegacy team are integral to making it happen? Probably everyone.
Yeah, so I don't think we have a 5-year plan. I don't think we really have a 3-year plan. I think our 1-year plan is to get over 50% growth, which is in this market it may not seem like it's like this outstanding growth, but for us it would be a really big achievement from the standpoint that we're at. So I think having realistic goals is really, really important. And if we are able to achieve that, that's something that we would be really proud of. And then, the overall team, it's kind of, I equate a lot of stuff back to Pivotal in terms of the stage that we're at. Who are your colleagues, your teammates that are going to be involved in making that happen? Like, how are you going to get as many eyes and ears on an opportunity as you can? Like, we're a small group, so we need to go into qualified opportunities and we need to execute really, really well. So how are you going to get, the pre-sales technical team? How are you going to get the customer success team? How are you going to get all those people like working together on these opportunities? So the answer is really kind of everybody.
That's great. So usually within the first week, we get between probably 3,000 and I think 20,000 views. So for those that are watching, what would be maybe your top kind of 3 or 4 nuggets in terms of sales success ideas?
I would think that like spending time qualifying your opportunities, depending on the market that you're in, like really understanding what you're bringing to the market and what problem that you're solving for a client and what that interaction with the client looks like. Because if you're selling a piece of software like we're selling, where it's going to be very involved, you can't afford to spend time in areas where you're not going to be successful. So, how do you get it? If your success rate is 1 out of 10, how do you take that one win and kind of do that reverse engineering perspective? Okay, what were the elements of that win that made it successful? So that what are the attributes of that? So as you're going and you're looking for other qualified opportunities, that you're going in with a better understanding of the persona and the the elements of a client's stack or business problem that you can be more successful in. I would say so that qualification and disqualifying when it's not there, like just get away from it, right? That would be one. Number 2, getting the larger group involved. At the end of the day, as an individual contributing salesperson, like your commission check doesn't change if you had, if you did it on your own, if you had 10 people involved. So get 10 people involved and get them in the boat with you. That would be another element. And that also goes with partners. So if you're selling into enterprise clients have a lot of partners that they're dealing with. So what can you learn from the partner community? How can you build relationships there? Joe Tucci used to, really, focus in on knowing your brief. Like, what do you know about your technology, and making sure that you can speak to it in a really, fairly intricate way, and really make that that connection to a technologist, so that you're viewed as a value add when you're going into these conversations. So those are just a couple of things that pop up.
Great. And in the book, just to highlight a couple of those things, Kevin Haverty from ServiceNow, his is something to the effect of kind of don't be the lone wolf, meaning, use all the resources you can to get anything done. And then I think it was Peter McKay that says, kind of say no fast, meaning figure out the deals, not to pursue, instead of, kind of hanging on, I gotta. And if you don't have good chances, cut your losses and focus on something that's more in the sweet spot, like you said in the beginning. So,
and then one thing I'd add to that for sales leaders, I think as we were building, what I learned at a lot of Pivotal was we had the financial backing of EMC and VMware. So when we were scaling our organization from very small to very large, hiring people, but kind of failing fast in that regard, like not being like a jerk about it or unthoughtful about it, but really just understanding, have you brought people into the organization that that are in a position to succeed quickly, and if yes, let's double down. If not, let's find a position for them to move on to. So kind of failing fast in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really cool. I was going to ask something else, but I totally forgot. Anyway, so just as we're getting to the end here, you've been great. Anybody else who wants to chime in with any comments or questions, please feel free. So if Nour were on, he would ask, and we've certainly been through a lot together, but if there's any PG Randy story you want to share.
Sure. There's lots. But we were chatting before when, so we're early on in EMC, our first couple of months, and we came down to the Meadowlands in New Jersey, where the sports stadium, to see Bruce Springsteen play in concert. And it was a Sunday, so we had the plan was after this concert we're going to get in the car and drive back to Boston. And I came out in my car, my Toyota Corolla had the window smashed, and it had absolutely everything in the car stolen. My radio, my laundry that my mother had just cleaned for me. My
days you have the removable radios, right?
The removable radio, which I think I pulled out and put under my seat. Anyway, so Randy was with me during that period, and we had to drive to my girlfriend, now my wife's house, and do all the cleanup and try to get ourselves back up to Natick, Mass. That by the beginning of business the next morning. So I remember we crashed at Suzanne's house and got up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get back up to EMC by business open. Randy was my partner in crime. I was the recipient of crime in that degree.
Yeah, but then the back end of the story was Dick and Maureen.
Yeah, so I literally been with the company like a month or two, and Dick Egan had heard the story and pulled me into his office, and he's like, "Hey, Obi," because I heard that you got some things stolen out of your car, including your briefcase. And he goes, if you thought enough to bring work home, I thought enough to buy you a new briefcase. So he hands me this new briefcase, which was way nicer than the one that I had. And he's like, "Just don't tell anybody that I did this." I'm like, "No problem, Dick. It's in the vault." And I think like 10 minutes later, I'm talking to like Rick Wojcik, and I'm like, "You won't believe what Dick just did." And like Dick walks by and like sees me and just kind of like shakes his head. But
I think Maureen got you a shirt and tie too, if I remember right.
Yeah, it was. That was about as PG as I can get, Randy.
There you go. All right, great. Anyway, so you've been fantastic guests. Thanks so much. Lots of great nuggets. So really appreciate it. And thanks to Alexander Group for being our sponsor. Next week, we've got episode number 83, Sean Foster, who's the CRO of Anomaly. So that'll certainly be great. And for those that are interested in looking at any past sessions or future, you can just go to the public site, salescommunity.com. If you click on the kind of graphic picture on the main site once, you'll see the upcoming guests, which right now I think we're booked out till end of July 2023. And then if you click a second time, you can go see any of the past guests as well. So Andy, this is certainly has been a great one. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Randy.
And thank you, Tucker, too. Tucker's behind the scenes. So Tucker, as always, thank you so much. Always something that happens, it seems, technology-wise, but he's here to save us. So, all right, everybody have a great rest of the week, and please feel free to tell others about this, and Tucker gets it posted all different kind of social medias.